Welcome, everybody. And we're here, we're just going to let people settle in and then we'll do the introduction. But welcome. Nice to see everybody.
Hello.
So we got the recording going. We got you on and
Great. Well,
okay.
welcome everyone.
Well, okay. Well, I think I'll start with the introduction and then we'll turn it over. But
Perfect.
let me just get this queued up. Okay. Well, welcome to the Three Principles Global Community Webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that is committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. And today we're so delighted. We have Sharon Castle, and Sharon is a transformational life coach and founder of MindFit Coaching Academy with over 40 years of experience in the personal development field and more than a decade working from the inside out understanding known as the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. She helps others return to the innate well-being and reconnect with intelligence behind life through her writing, coaching, and speaking. She invites people to slow down, listen inward, and discover the freedom of being fully alive. And she's known for her down-to-earth style, deep insight, and wisdom. And I will turn it over to you. Oh, and the topic is waging peace in a time of chaos, the legacy of Nelson Mandela. And with that, Sharon, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm really grateful to be here. And it feels like such an honor. It's been a while since I've been on this platform. Tom and I were saying maybe more than 2 years. And having been in the principles for 10 years already, it feels like I need to kind of be a bit more present on this platform because it is a wonderful community. Very grateful to 3PGC and obviously to our beloved Sydney Banks. So I see some familiar faces. I've seen some of you around on various other places that we can learn about these wonderful principles. And this talk has been on my heart for some time. It's like you, I'm sure you've noticed that the world seems to be in a lot of chaos. There seems to be a lot of noise out there. And South Africa is a pretty unique place. Has anyone ever visited here? I'd love to see. Anyone know South Africa? Great, Therese. Yay. And Jennifer, did you also put your hand up? Okay, perfect.
I'm
Yay.
I'm originally South African and I live in
Okay.
France now. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Mm.
And Wendy as well. Great. Oh, well, nice to have you here. So then if you've lived in South Africa, you'll know a lot of what I speak of. And the word waging peace was something I heard a long time ago. And it stuck with me for a long time because I was born to a family um, that were probably not very peaceful. And my father was an ex-prisoner of war, Second World War, and he came out of that war very hurt, very pained. We lived in a home that was a lot of alcoholic behavior in it. And I heard a lot as a young child that just didn't sit well with me. And I remember feeling a sense of sort of agony when I went with one of the ladies that helped to raise me. And she had to go into one side of the post office at the time, and I had to go on the other side. And I'm sure those of you that are South African are well aware of that apartheid era. And why I wanted to relate this to Nelson Mandela is because I was born and raised in South Africa. I've raised my children in this country. And so I've lived through so much of what you've seen in the news. If you haven't seen it in the news, you've probably heard about Nelson Mandela, or as we fondly called him, Madiba. And what happened in the country when he was released from prison really made its mark on everyone. And obviously, when I was standing in a queue waiting to vote, the first, sort of democratically elected president of South Africa, it's a day I'll never ever forget, because there was a sense of peace. There was this no rush, no one pushing. It was just a different South Africa. And I think we could sense that we were creating some history. But the stories that I want to tell you about really started when I was quite young. And where I went to school, we used to have a bus stop very close to the army barracks in the middle of Johannesburg. I went to a school called Commercial High. And on a particular day, how I came more aware of what was going on in the country was we had a netball practice which was cancelled, and I went to the bus stop, so I was there earlier than usual on this particular day. It was 1975. I was in my final year of school, caught the bus, went home, and literally about an hour later, at the bus stop that I had been standing on, that I stood at every single day of my life while I was in high school to catch the first bus of 2 home, there was a bombing. And the bombing, there were a couple of people that were killed, and I would have been standing there. And it was the very first time that I was sort of aware of how imminent danger was a lot of the time for us in South Africa. And coming from the family that I did, I was constantly exposed to really derogatory behavior. And for whatever reason, there was just something that was in me that it was an intolerance. And in 1976, in July, I will never forget, as a new person working for Anglo-American Corporation at that time on the 7th floor, hearing a commotion and looking down in the street. And this is, just sort of a year later, at this riot that was happening. Police firing bullets, young people running. And that was June the 16th in 1976, which is just about to happen on Monday. And it's since been called Youth Day, because on that day, thousands of youth were shot at, and a young boy of 12 died. His name was Hector Peterson, and it made the news. And through all of this, I was so blatantly aware that something was dangerous, that I was constantly, under stress. And then I came to the conclusion that there was going to be some change when I stood in that queue to vote. And when I started to look at what Mandela meant for me, Madiba, the words that he said when he was coming out of prison have stayed in my mind for a long time. He said, as I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and my hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. So that tells me the heart of the 3 principles. It's about pointing to something within. And Mandela knew how to live that way. He knew that freedom isn't something that's granted by governments. It's something that's awakened in consciousness. And finding the principles has really helped me to see through the illusions of thinking. He seemed to live from this mind of God, what we in the principle world called mind. And he knew that there was something deeper than what was on the outside. And there is a story about him that really stands out above all the others. And when he was invited to a banquet to celebrate, the new South Africa, there were a lot of people there. And amongst the guests was his prison, the guard that used to lock him in his prison cell. And he tells a story of wanting to go sit next to this guard and walking to the table and sitting down next to him. And the prison guard didn't even want to look at him. Obviously, just whatever the sense was, there was just some kind of a disconnect. And this man picked up a glass to put it to his lips, obviously to drink something. And Mandela put his hand over the man's shaking hand and said to him, I understand. It's okay. And that just stood out for me so much, of seeing beyond this idea of what it is that we might get caught up in the world of thought. So in essence, for me, waging peace is to be a proactive agent of peace. Growing up in South Africa meant that we had to consciously know what to say when we saw, something happening. For any one of us, I don't think we would allow someone to hurt a child or an animal. We'd step in. And for me, that's why I wanted to use the word waging peace, because peace is not always about something soft and spineless. Peace is often about allowing people to feel who you are in your peace and expressing to them that there is something better. So another story that is really so prominent and so recent, about 4 years ago, 2021, just after COVID, we got word, obviously in the community. I stay in a place called Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. It's on the east coast of South Africa, and it's a beautiful place, but there was talk that there was going to be some kind of an uprising. And in July, in 2021, just shortly after COVID, we had to barricade our neighborhood. We had to close our town off with razor wire. Our husbands were standing guard, armed to the hilt with all kinds of ammunition. And our food source was being attacked because our stores were being looted. And as the word came, sort of down the track that it was coming for us, we had to really gear up. And I remember standing in my kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, because they'd already been standing guard for 2 or 3 nights. And this went on for 2 weeks. It was terrifying. We could hear the bullets flying just a few streets away. We knew that something was going on, making sandwiches at all times of the night, collecting stuff, sitting on the phone, trying to organize a helicopter to airdrop food into South Africa, something that most people don't even know about in 2021. And when all of that was over, you can imagine how much anger there was. And I made a call about 2 or 3 days into what was going on to Rob Cook, who many of you may know in the Three Principle world. And I'd seen his transformation with Michael Neal, and I knew he had military experience. And there was just something inside of me that said, I need to reach out to somebody to find out what I could do, because I was as terrified as everybody else. But I knew that there was something that, should I reach out to find it, I would find it. And I know where to find wisdom. That's something I definitely know. And Rob Cook tells the story of him being petrified when I called him, because he didn't know me from a bar soap. He took my call, and I said to him, I really need some help. This is what the situation is like. I don't know what to do. I'm considered someone that knows the principles, someone that has worked out there and have a little bit of a name for perpetuating love and peace, but I'm as scared as everyone else. And the words that he said to me was, Sharon, just keep doing what you're doing, because just by you being in that place, you will be creating a ripple effect for everyone. And my husband happened to walk in at that moment, and I said to him, come over here. And I said, my husband is also Rob. And I said, I want you to meet Rob. And they started to chat, and Rob Cook realized that my husband had some military experience. And he said to him, just keep your wife cooking the soup, go and stand guard in the razor-wired bridges that we had to close the town off to, and you'll get through it. And he was spot on. But the one thing that I knew to do was, when I went to the bridge to deliver the food and the soup or whatever it was that we were trying to keep our men going through the night, I was spreading love, and I was definitely waging peace, because they wanted to wage war. They wanted to take action. They wanted revenge. They wanted to keep their family safe, and I understood it. And because this subject is important for me, not because I'm so active in it, but because when I see someone who's not at peace and I know that they can find it, I'm not one that's just going to leave it, because I grew up without it. My young childhood was nothing but peace. It was chaos. And so that's the message I feel that Mandela spoke about, and especially in his book, The Long Walk to Freedom. He spoke about this peace, and he said that if there's one thing that is important, it's reconciliation. It is about forgiveness. And when the principles first became something for me, and I realized that, my word, there's this simplistic way of living. I don't have to be doing all these things. I can actually just step away. I can be in my peace. That's freedom for me. I was reminded of that time when I was a young woman growing up, especially as recent as 2021, and thinking to myself, I was spared that day. I've been spared this time. I clearly have something that I need to do. I have a role to play, a message I need to spread, and that's what I'm going to do. And I guess that if you know what goes on in South Africa, you will be privy to the fact that there's a lot of crime. You know, sometimes we don't feel safe, but we still live in a beautiful place. My heart is in Africa. My roots are in Africa. My children and my grandchildren are in Africa. And I want to make a difference. I know I want to be in a position that if somebody is hurting or in pain or waging war, I want to be able to say to them, there is a different way, and you'll find it in these principles. So I want to end with this, and I'm sure you've got lots of questions that you would like to ask. I hope so, because for me, the principles speak so much to the mind that Mandela could cultivate after 27 years in prison. Imagine that, 27 years. He could have come out wanting revenge. He could have come out and created some kind of a war. We could have had a civil war. So his legacy for me still stands head and shoulders above everything else. Yes, is this the country in a different state? Absolutely. But the fact remains is that Mandela got us through something because he looked inside. He wasn't constantly affected by what was going on outside. His people wanted war. The government, the apartheid government at the time, had to make change. And the community and the country just stepped up and said, we want this change. And even in 2021, there could have been a civil war. But what happened to the communities, because we stood together, is we created everyone in the community. And there were lots of people just on the exterior of our community who were hard hit. Lots of people died. 350 something people died. There were vigilantes out there. This was going on like in real time. Every single day we were hearing news. Obviously, technology, all of the news was coming, and people were very, very angry. And so a movie was made called Invictus. I don't know if any of you have heard or seen the movie. And it was about the Rugby World Cup in 1995. And obviously 1994 was the elections, 1995, the Rugby World Cup, South Africa won. And there was a poem that Mandela used to read while he was in prison. And it was the poem called Invictus by William Ernest Henley. And the last two lines of that poem said, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And I read it again while I was thinking about what I was going to talk about. And I thought, no, I'm not the captain of my soul, but I am aware of the one that is. And I think that's the difference. I know where my wisdom comes from. I know where I can come home to myself. And so we are not victims of our circumstances. I certainly am not. And I'm not just a puppet, you know, in some community that needs to follow rules. I am an individual. My freedom is based in the idea of me having a peaceful place in myself and being able to show people and point the way back home for them. So we are expressions of divine intelligence. And that one beautiful quote of Sydney Banks that says, if the only thing people knew was not to be afraid of their own circumstances, that alone would change the world. And I wish I could shout that from the rooftops for South Africans. We're getting better. We really are. The Three Principles community is growing. I feel so blessed to be a part of that. And so these kinds of communities are important because South Africa for a very long time felt so distant, so apart, so neglected in a way. And I had no clue when I was asked what subject I wanted to choose. I don't know when that was, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And I chose the subject for some reason. I've never really had this conversation with anyone, but it's been on my heart to have it. For some reason, I chose it. Little did I know that Americans would go through their own election process and South Africans would be given refugee status. So it's a whole new ball game. And I didn't know it at the time. But now I see how wisdom works all the time. How even in the moments when you've got to make a little decision, a seemingly little decision by the three principal board to say, what do you want to speak about? And you choose a subject unbeknown to you what's going to happen, down the line. And here we are together, 15 of us, talking about something that's so relatable to the principles. And whatever community Sydney Banks grew up in, he didn't need to have the severity of war and apartheid and crime and all of the kinds of things that go with it. And some of them are horrific. They are. It still makes me, or in fact, it increases my perseverance, because that's what Mandela showed. The beauty of perseverance, of forgiveness, of love, of realizing that not everything we think is true and that we don't have to act on it, of consciously making a choice to wage peace, because where I come from and where I live, sometimes I have to do that because still it's in my face all the time. And I'm in a community where it can feel so hard to wage that peace, but it doesn't stop me. And that's why I think peace is not soft and pretty. Sometimes peace is an active, conscious decision to express something in a loving way from that place of peace within me and love within me to another human being that says, I don't think that's the way. Do you think there's a better way? From a complete place of unconditional love, even although at times I didn't feel it. In 2021, I didn't feel it. In 1995, I didn't feel it. In 1996, I didn't feel it. That's true. But I still know where to look to find it. And I'm really grateful for the lessons that I've received, from everything that I've been through. And I feel like I've come home to what it truly means to be human by finding these principles. And I think Mandela, although he obviously didn't know the principles, he was living them. He was the embodiment of those principles. So if you ever get an opportunity to watch the movie Invictus or to read his book, Long Walk to Freedom, I highly recommend it, because they are beautiful, words and images in the movie that capture the heart of Africa and particularly of South Africa. So, I guess what I'm saying is that there is a deeper part of all of us that chaos can't touch. Doesn't matter how extreme it might seem. And there's a space in us that is whole and unbroken, and the principles tell us that. And I think it's not about being it, it's about remembering it. It's about remembering that that's who we are originally. And if Mandela could do it after being in prison for 27 years, then I guess we have every reason to do it as well. So if this legacy speaks to you in any way, there we go. Sunny, yay, you've got the movie. It's such a lovely movie. I've watched it multiple times. Really, really good. I'm so happy that you know of what I'm talking about. So I suppose if you're here, that's what's calling to you, because I always believe that nobody turns up on any one of these calls just for some random reason. There's something that, speaks to you, and hopefully you heard something today. So I've been talking for a lot longer than I would normally want to, but anyway, I'd love for you to ask me some questions or to, add to the conversation. That would be so delightful. Anyone?
Well, Sharon, I have a question as we're waiting for
Sure.
people. I'm curious about, I imagine you doing your work, sharing with people, spreading your message. And I imagine like not everybody 100% gets on board right away.
True.
right? And do you have any stories about like what is it like for you when you get some pushback or resistance about the message? You know, how do you like engage people who may not seem to be open right away to what you're saying? Do you have any stories or
I,
example?
I, I have multiple, multiple stories. And, the common thing that uh, is often voiced um, is that, you can have these fluffy, um, expressions of how ideal it might be if everybody loved everybody else, but that's not true. And you've lived in this country and you've seen that for yourself. And my constant answer is, well, I want to be the change. So I don't even want to go to that place. I know that there's a world of difference once you can see through the illusion of this made up idea that we have, that everybody is the same and everybody wants to hurt you and everybody is a criminal. And I just say to them, I just don't want to live that way. So the peace that passes all understanding is important to me. And if you feel like I am living in that way, well, then I invite you to just stick around, hang out with me and see what happens. So I don't mind that people are opposed to it. I grew up with opposition in my own world, in my own family. My father was a member of a political party that was called the Ossava Brandbachs. It was worse than the AVB. They were shocking. I grew up with that. So I know how to deal with people who come at me with some kind of resistance. I don't buckle. And that's why I say waging peace is not soft and fluffy. Sometimes it means that you've got to stand up strong and you've got to say something from a loving place, always in so much kindness, but it needs to be said. So I have had opportunity, I call it, where people have voiced something, and I've asked them very politely, look, in this place, we don't speak that way. So I'd love to invite you back when you can maybe have a conversation with me about what I feel is far more loving. And usually they don't like it, but it's so kind. Um, and they either do or they don't, but it's really irrelevant to me because I'm going to walk my talk. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to shine my light as brightly as I can because that's, I feel, is my responsibility. So for me, it is about a bit of a waging rather than just a settling, because our country is not settled by any stretch of the imagination. So
Right.
yeah, I hope that answers your
Oh,
question.
that's beautiful.
Mm,
Like I really felt that when you said, I don't want to go there.
yeah.
Like that's very powerful to me. So thank you.
Mm, thank
We
you.
have a Sunny with his hand. Go
Yes,
ahead.
Sunny. Sunny with the Invictus video.
Yeah, I looked it up in EMDB. Yeah, I just would like to add to what you said there, that
Yes.
what you expressed now is what I call being genuinely kind.
Explain. Tell me more.
Because when you are genuinely kind, you say no when it's the right thing to do, and you say yes when it's the right thing to do. And
Yes.
that's the only way that everybody becomes a winner.
I love the way that you put that. Yeah, because I can say no. And I do it with a lot of love and kindness. Thank you, Sunny. Yes, absolutely. Anyone else? South Africans. Love to hear any of your stories that you could add to this conversation. I'll tell you, Jennifer, you're going to unmute. I can see that. Yay.
Yeah. It's so touching because in fact I noticed that you left school a year after me, so we almost the same age and same generation, and
Oh,
and I left South Africa 40 years ago, so I left alone, and and here I am.
Yes.
And I brought up my children. I founded a family here. I believed I couldn't stay, and I couldn't found a family, and I just fled basically the apartheid regime, and so when freedom came, and when Nelson Mandela was finally liberated, it was too late for me to go back. My family was here. My children were French. My life was, my path had been chosen. But I have been back a few times we took our children back a few times, and I still have family in Cape Town. And I was aware of your struggle after COVID, because I was in this community, and I think I must have heard Rob Cook talk about it, and then the whole story came out, and I didn't know you were in Durban though. Although
Okay.
another time you told me that you had monkeys, and I've been to stay with a friend in Durban, and we had monkeys. I did monkey watching at breakfast out in the garden. So yeah, I know Durban quite well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's lovely. Ah,
Mm.
that's so nice. So what is your sense of South Africa now, Jennifer, after having been away for 40 years?
Well, I'm glad to hear that there's a community, as a Three Principles community, growing. I'm glad about that. I'm interested, and I'm interested in getting involved in some way as well. And so that's why I'm here, because I knew it was you, and I loved your subject. And I've got the two books. I've got the two Nelson Mandela books in French and in English. I've actually just lent them to somebody who's going to be going to South Africa, because I think it's a good thing to read them beforehand. And
Wow.
And I do think another thing. I do think that in Africa, because I'm also very attached. It's I always say it's my favorite continent, but I do believe that, you know, in spite of the fact that when I was in South Africa, I learned Xhosa, and I began to understand conversations and so on. I do believe that the two important languages in Africa are French and English, because they're international languages. And the unfortunate thing is that very often in Africa, the people who speak English cannot relate to the French. And so it's a cleavage and a problem. Anyway.
You know what's so interesting, Jennifer, in 19 what was the year? And it was 1976 when we had that, you know, the uprising.
Yes.
The reason the uprising happened was because the apartheid government insisted that Afrikaans be a language that they would be teaching everybody at school. And that's why
it would be considered to be the mother tongue.
Which I mean, obviously was crazy. Now, the funny part of that is we have now 11 official languages.
Yes.
11.
Yeah. And I learned Afrikaans when I was a child. We lived in a village on the sea called Mossel Bay, and I learned Afrikaans in the school playground, because the different races were separate, but also the Afrikaans community and the English-speaking community were separated. So we were not in the same class, but we met up and played together in the playground.
You know, that had a ripple effect across all, you know, cultures and so on. It obviously would, because there was division. You know, there was no community. And I'm very happy to say that that's changed. And Bev Bank, that's there, she's part of the 3P community in Durban in South Africa. Hello, Bev. So nice to have you here. So we've got a fair community, and I've got a coaching academy, and we've certified 38 life coaches. So we're getting, we're taking some strides towards creating a stronger community. And I'm part of 3PGC, and it's just something I love, and I want to stay connected because we know to stay in the conversation is essential. Thank you for your love, Paula. Yeah, so that's so cool. Nice to hear your stories as well, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah, and Paula, if you want to speak up, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Sharon, I love the term wage peace.
Yes.
I just that really resonates with me, and I wanted to share a story in which I experienced the power of the 3 principles in an event that really impacted my community recently. I'm American. I live near Boulder, Colorado, and last week we had an incident in which a group of Jewish people were peacefully protesting, as they had done on a regular basis. Some of you may have heard about this, by walking a main thoroughfare in Boulder, and a man set them on fire. And many were injured. The man was apprehended, and his motivation that he spoke very clearly of was his hatred for Zionists, and that he chanted "Free Palestine." This was obviously very disturbing to our community, and it was in an extremely, well, like these often do happen, in an extremely public place. So wonderfully many other people could have been injured and were not. But so I have a small group of 3 principles folks that I gather with regularly, and so I emailed them and asked if they wanted to have a Zoom call so that we could talk about this and be together in this frightening, through this frightening experience. And 2 of the members of this small group are Jewish. And none of us are people of color. I obviously am not. And I'm, I don't know if this term is familiar all over the world, but in the US, I'm what's considered a WASP, which is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant by heritage. But we came together, and we at first shared the horror that we felt about this incident. Someone, 2 of us in the group knew someone who had been on the march, who was thankfully uninjured, but was involved. We talked about how unacceptable this action was. And my point in saying this is that we allowed for a space of deep listening for people to let their feelings flow. And what was so beautiful to me, and not surprising to me, but as we continued to talk and share, we began to, in addition to sharing about, we began to see compassion arise. And we probably, what we might think of as naturally, saw the compassion for the people, the protesters who had been injured, the people in the community who felt frightened. One of my colleagues said, You know, I will tell you that in my community, Jews feel like they have a target on their back. But this compassion began to arise, as well as our, I guess here's what I want to say. We also began to experience compassion for the man who did this. We found ourselves speaking about how lost in thought he was, how he believed his thinking. And as a result of believing his thinking, he experienced such sensations of distress that his lost mind, his personal mind, his conditioned mind, registered thinking that said that this was the way to alleviate that distress. And how we could hold compassion for someone who is in that much pain,
Yes.
that they felt that the only way to be relieved of pain was to inflict pain on innocent others. So we saw his psychological innocence. And it was among all of us. All of us recognized this, and it did not take away from our compassion for the Jewish group that were harmed. It did not take away our resolution that this is not the way that you handle distress, that this is unacceptable. Anti-Semitism is unacceptable. It did not take that away. But we ended our gathering together with this incredible feeling of love and compassion and hope in the midst of the very troubled times we are experiencing in America, in the world, and this particular, over this past couple of weeks, in my neighborhood. And it was extremely powerful for all of us. And so I just wanted to share how, to wrap up, I just wanted to share how this is the power of the three principles that you are speaking to. And I thought that this is waging peace. So thank you. Thank you for offering this today and talking about this.
Well, thank you, Paula. I'm so happy that you shared that, and you know, just that conclusion that your group reached and that we can reach here, that you know, we have something that's so incredibly powerful to know. And so I feel like once you know it, you can't unknow it, and you've got to be spreading it. And if that means you're going to be waging peace, then that's what you do, you know. So thank you so much for sharing that. Love that. Yeah. Anyone else? Any other stories? I will tell you one that, yes, Bev, please go ahead. Bev from South Africa.
Bev from South Africa. Thank you, Sharon. And
Thank
Paula,
you.
just in listening to your story, what resonated so loudly when you were saying compassion for everybody out there, it was just, it rings so loudly that we can only feel that compassion for someone out there, irrespective of what they've done, when we have that compassion for ourselves. And once again, thanks Sydney Banks. And for whoever hasn't been to visit South Africa, come visit us. It's a beautiful, beautiful country.
Really
and
is.
thank you, Sharon, for just bringing the three principles in such a big way and such a solid way to South
Thank you.
Africa.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bev.
Thank you. Come visit us, everybody.
We do. We have monkeys and bush babies like on my patio, and you know, bats and mongoose and duiker, little buck, and we have some wild animals. We don't have lions and elephants and things, but we do have a lot of wildlife that freely roam. So we are very blessed in that way. Did someone else put up the hand, Tom? No?
I don't see any.
Well, we've got some time, and I'd love to tell a story, if I may,
Yeah,
if you
please
need to
do.
listen. I think it was about 2023, maybe 22. I went into one of the communities with a few three principal people, and we were asked to come and speak to a community with child welfare, to a group of counselors, psychologists, police people, social workers, teachers, doctors in the community, a local community, a little way away, poor community. And what greeted me there was something that really woke me up to just how important these principles are, because there were about 38 people on that day, and I stood up and I had everything that I needed and a flip chart, and I was going to teach the principals. They had had a devastating incident in their community involving a child, and a lot of the people who were working with them, including the police. There's a community called Rise Up. It's against gender-based violence and so on, and it was an awful story. I'm not going to tell you that part, but I stood up there and I started to speak, and I could see it, nothing was landing. These people were exhausted. They were so tired. And I could see it in their eyes and in their faces. And I just stopped. I was 10 or 15 minutes in, and I just stopped and I said, I'm feeling for you. I'm feeling for what it is that you need to do, because in this organization, it was Child Welfare Tongaat, they literally pick up children from dustbins and behind stairwells and, in shop fronts. I mean, that's what they do. And then there's a whole court case, and they've got to, find how to, if they find the parents, what to do about the parents. And usually they're on drugs, and, they've got a bunch of other children. Some of them get arrested because they try and sell their children. It's horrible. And I stopped the whole thing, and I just said to them, something inside me is telling me that you need to rest. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to ask you to tell me what's on your mind. And one by one, they were saying that they'd been working long hours. The police were run off their feet in trying to catch the people that had, abandoned their children and their babies, or try to sell them. The courts were full. People were waiting in queues. Sometimes you'd wait for days until your case was seen. Children were, not being placed, and then we had orphanages full of children waiting for help. And I started to tell them that, everything that they think doesn't have to be listened to, and it's a place that they can go to where they can feel calm. And the one lady said to me, what are you talking about? What do you mean that there's a place I can go to? I said, well, it's within you. And if you just take a moment, and I slowed right down, and you just listen to something beyond what it is that you're thinking in the moment, something is going to give you a direction, and you'll feel it. And the room got so quiet. It was quite remarkable. And I just stood there. I was as in awe as everyone else. I could see everyone was just like, what is this? What is going on? And afterwards I said to them, did you feel that? And the one lady put up her hand and she said, I've been working in this community a long time, and I don't know what just happened now. I don't know what you did. I said, I didn't do anything. That was peace that was descending on everybody, because we just here for each other. We're listening, we're hearing, we're feeling, we are together. And she said, well, then I've been doing my work in the wrong way all the time, because I always thought I had to be busy and tell them, and you didn't tell us what to do. You just told us that there's something else. And I don't know what it is, but I think I felt something. And that was the game changing. They invited us back. We were there for 4 hours. They invited us back. We went the next week for 4 hours. And then the communities cottoned on, and we went to so many communities just to go and talk. No teaching. We talked, we spoke. And every time somebody said something and I could just point them back to themselves, it was remarkable what happened. And afterwards, the one social worker who eventually became a coach as well and went through the academy, she came to me and said, what was that thing? What was I feeling? And I said to her, there's something in you that just knows. And I can't tell you what it is because I'm going to give you words, but you felt it. And that's the most important thing. And if you keep doing your work from that place, it's a beautiful story. And that woman is featured in Hannah Studley's book, Beyond Diagnosis, because that social worker was really ill and she couldn't have a baby. And she got better and she applied for a child. And one of the children that she had rescued 5 years previously, they could never home this child. She adopted that child. I mean, what a story. You know, it was just so beautiful. And it's now documented for life in Hannah Studley's book. So, you know, I've got so many of those little, they seem so small, but I know they're making an impact where they are. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's like people that get it and they live from that place. Now the ripple effect, all boats rise with the tide. People will pick it up just by them being, you know, in that state of being, that they know what it feels like and they know where to go and they know where to look. So yeah, I wanted, that just sort of came up for me. I wanted to share that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
anyone
so
else?
beautiful, Sharon. It's a good way to
Sunny.
end today. And you know, there's something in what you're saying in that, you know, there are things happening all over the world. The different communities are experiencing things, and yet whatever that is inside of us, that doesn't go anywhere,
Yep.
and it's available
Mm,
to all of us. And I
absolutely.
love how your story brought that up. It was so powerful, and thank you so much for your love and care and your presence during this time. And I just wanted to let people know, coincidentally, our next 3PG webinar is going to be Rob Cook.
Ah,
3 weeks from today, so July 1st, 2,
fabulous.
2 p.m. Rob Cook will be here. So hope to see some of you there. And again, do you want to say anything in closing? Sharon?
You know, I think if I just circle back to what Mandela stood for, Madiba, which means father, you know, he definitely felt something inside of him. And I think that legacy has lived and will live. And no matter what's going on in our country, or like you say, anywhere else in the world, I think if we can just take what it is that we've spoken about here and step up a little more, you know, to be able to be expressive from that place of it's okay. Even if you don't hear me, I would have maybe planted a seed, and at some point you might just remember something rather than just leave it and walk away and say, oh, that's not my problem,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, that's what I would like to close with.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I just want to invite everybody, if they like to unmute themselves and say goodbye and thank you to
Great.
Sharon.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you everybody for your presence. It's been awesome connecting with you. Appreciate it.
Sharon.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Sharon.
your sharing.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Tom.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Enjoy the
everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Mm.
Bye bye
Bye,
Thank you,
then.
Tom. Bye.
everybody.
Tom. Thank you very much.